Every time I sit down with a beginner motorcyclist and I ask them, what is your plan? What bike are you going to get first? And then what bike are you going to graduate to next? And what is your ultimate dream bike? The conversation always goes something like, I'm going to start on a Ninja 300, then I'm going to make my way up to a Ninja 400, then I'm going to get a ZX6R and a ZX10R next, and then one day when I win the lottery, it's definitely going to be an H2. And then there is a subset of beginner motorcyclists who want to start on a cruiser because they couldn't care less about you and your sport bikes. They don't want to start obviously on a Rocket 3 from Triumph with like 300 horsepower or a Ducati Diavel that costs $40,000. They want to start on something cheap and something small, and that's exactly what we have in front of us. One of the world's most popular cruiser bikes from Honda. And it's the Rebel, and not just any Rebel, the smallest one, the Rebel 300. So let's go wheel to wheel and everything in between on this 2023 Honda Rebel 300 ABS and see how Honda cracked the code for the perfect beginner cruiser motorcycle. Then we're going to get on it, go out there and ride this motorcycle and see if it's only good on paper or if it is actually a good road riding bike. And then I'm going to quantify my thoughts and give this Honda Rebel 300 my ME score. Let's start by talking about what's under the hood on this 2023 Honda Rebel 300. It's probably the smallest engine you can get away with without calling this a scooter, which is precisely why this bike is so popular. It's because of its engine size. It's just something so cute and nice about a really small engine in the world of 1000cc and 2000cc motorcycles. Having a 286cc single-cylinder engine is really refreshing, to be honest. It's connected to a 6-speed slipper clutch, and you hear the word slipper clutch a lot these days. It's essentially on every motorcycle. It used to be only reserved for really high-performing bikes about 10-15 years ago. What it means, though, is that the clutch plates have a mechanism built into them that they slip off of each other if the speed of the wheel and the engine RPM are not really in line with one another. That happens in two scenarios. Either you're on a racetrack and you're a very seasoned MotoGP rider, so you have a really fast-going motorcycle at like 200 miles per hour, and all of a sudden you go to your second gear or first gear to make a harsh turn. There, you're gonna really lock up the bike and crash if you don't have slipper clutch. And the second scenario is a beginner motorcyclist who's going fast on the freeway and they downshift more than they should to a too low of a gear, and the rotation of the tire and the engine RPM become too different than one another. When you let go of the clutch in those scenarios and you don't have a slipper clutch, the clutch will engage, meaning the plates will come together, get stuck to each other, and that will bring the speed of the rear wheel to the speed of the RPM of the engine, which means locking up the wheel. But if you have slipper clutch, the plates on the clutch will continue to slip off of each other until either the RPM of the engine goes high enough to match the rotation of the wheel, or the rotation of the wheel slows down enough to come to the area that the RPM is in, and only then will the clutch plates engage and, you continue riding. So it's really important for a beginner motorcycle to have slipper clutch, and of course this bike has it. Coming out of this single cylinder, you have just one pipe coming out, all blacked out. To this blacked out muffler, everything on this bike is blacked out, and that's actually the shadow black color theme on this motorcycle. And here is how the muffler sounds. Okay, the power is great. 22, 23 horsepower is not going to get anybody in trouble, so that's good. What about ergonomics? As you know, there are 3 contact points between the rider and its motorcycle. You have where your hands touch the handlebars, and you have where your butt sits on the seat, and your foot rests are the 3 points that you have to consider, especially as a beginner motorcyclist. When you're talking about a cruiser, you want the handlebars to be up, the seat as low as possible, and the footrests all the way to the front. That's literally the opposite of a super sport bike, where the handlebars are low, the seat is high, and the footrests are pushed to the very back, so you have that push-up form that you're in, ready to dive into corners. You want exactly the opposite of that in a cruiser, and you have it here. This bike, in fact, has one of the lowest seat heights in any cruiser offered today. It's only 27.2 inches high. It's about a foot below my butt, which means when I sit on this, even if you are like 5'3", 5'4", you're not going to have a problem flat-footing this bike. I have flat-footed both sides, and I can easily manipulate the bike. Something that's really important to you as the beginner motorcyclist, and your feet are going to be right up here. They're not going to be too far forward. And that's my complaint about something like a Ducati X Diavel, where the footrests are way up here. That actually kind of hinders your ability to bail out of the bike or to control the bike in a scary scenario, because there's just something uncomfortable about your feet being way too up there or way too back here. Somewhere around where it is really optimal. And you know, it's Honda. They have probably the largest motorcycle in market to do research on and to figure out where your feet have to be to provide you the most comfort, especially on a beginner motorcycle like this one. So here is how your ergonomics is going to look from the side. I hope the GoPro is actually shooting the entire area and not cutting anything off. But there it is. This is how you're gonna look on a Honda Rebel 300. Boom, boom, boom. Now let's talk about technology on the Honda Rebel 300. I believe as a beginner motorcycle, there is a sweet spot to hit, not giving the bike too much or too little technology, because too much technology makes the bike expensive and hinders a beginner motorcyclist from learning crucial skills like how to control not to wheelie, how to control the bike on a slippery surface. Maybe it's just rained a little bit. You need to still be able to ride out there and control the bike, and too little technology is obviously going to be dangerous. This bike, I believe, has hit the sweet spot for technology because it does have LED lights all around it, which not only looks good, but also is safe because LED lights are more visible than just dim light bulbs. And it gives you ABS on this bike, which is very important for a beginner motorcycle. I would not really ride a motorcycle without ABS unless it's designed for off-roading purposes, which obviously this bike isn't. They also give you an LCD screen here. It's not a TFT screen, and it's not super large, and it shouldn't be that way because it would be very out of place for the style of a bobber. It's this round LCD screen. It's kind of nice visibility-wise, especially at night, but it is also monotone. So it's not very colorful and it's not really entertaining to look at. There are no like major graphics or a startup animation and a shutdown animation. Again, those things don't provide any safety features. They're just visual things, and they would just drive up the cost, which you don't want on a beginner motorcycle. You're gonna ding, dent, scratch that thing. You don't want it to cost $600–700 just to change your dash. So I think they made a pretty good choice putting this LCD here. It's very fitting of the character of the bike, and it's pretty visible at night. Now let's talk about design on this Honda Rebel. It's Honda, so you're gonna expect a very conservative look. Unlike Kawasaki and Yamaha, they are going for these robotic, futuristic looks. Honda is sticking to a very basic design that's not gonna age probably as bad as Kawasaki and Yamaha will. This design is kind of timeless on a motorcycle that's really not that historically significant anyway. So you're not making a statement here. You're making a tool that works, and no wonder the Honda Rebel is one of the highest selling cruisers, especially among beginner motorcyclists. because it's easy to work on, it's simple, you can duct tape things together, and in fact, Honda itself on their website calls this motorcycle a black canvas because it is blacked out, but also it's ready for your modding. This bike with a starting price, with the ABS version, the starting price of about $5,100, it's a really good price for you to save the rest of your money and mod it. Whereas some BMW models, for example, their cruisers already start at $25,000, $30,000. So how much money are you gonna have left to modify those already expensive bikes? This one is cheap to start with, and you're gonna have all of your money saved up to do all the mods you want. So you might be like, all right, I'm kind of sold on this Honda Rebel 300, but I want to shop around. What other manufacturers are making something similar to this? And the answer is no one. The closest motorcycle you can get to this from other manufacturers would be the Eliminator from Kawasaki. The problem with that bike is that it's still more powerful than this and more expensive. So in a sense, it's not a comp to this one. The closest to style you're gonna get to this bobber is the OG designer of bobbers, Harley Davidson Street Bob. But again, that's not a comp to this one, not because the design differs so much like the Eliminator did compared to this one. Harley's Street Bob is $18,000. This one is barely $5,000. So it's a huge price gap. And that essentially cuts every beginner motorcycle out of the market for the Street Bob. I don't want to pay out the door $20,000 for a bike if I have 5 days experience of riding a motorcycle. The other options you have could be the Vulcan S itself. It's got a parallel twin 649cc engine. Again, too much power to be a comp to this particular motorcycle. Yamaha has the Bolt R spec, which is a bobber. Again, that one is a V-twin, so it's not a single cylinder engine like this one. It has more power, and of course, it's a lot more expensive. And Triumph has the Bonneville bobber, which is a $14,000 bike, and that one has 1,200 cc's of displacement. Again, not even close to the bike that we are reviewing today. And with all of that said, I think you and I are ready to get on this bike, take it out there and see how it rides. But before we do that, a big shout out to my new friends, Everett Powersports, for allowing me to review this bike. This bike has 0 miles on it. It's brand new. In fact, when I started it up to show you guys the sound of its muffler, an amazing smell of burning plastic filled this place up because it's brand new. Probably the only other time it was started up was in Honda's manufacturing plant, and now it's here and you and I are going to test ride it. Thank you to Everett Powersports for allowing us this opportunity to take a close look at this Honda Rebel 300, but also they allowed me to go up the chain and go to Honda Rebel 500 and also 1100, the regular one and the one without a clutch and gear. It's an automatic Honda Rebel. We're going to test ride that too, and I'm going to review those down the line in more series to this video later. But again, a big thank you to Everett Powersports for creating this opportunity for us. If you want to buy this bike, go to the comment section, and if you click on that link, it's going to take you to their website, and if you mention my name, that you saw my video and you want to buy this bike through me from them, they're going to give you an additional discount on an already amazing price that they have on this particular unit that we're going to test ride today. So with that, let's go and test ride this bike. Oh yeah, by the way, I forgot to mention the weight on this bike is close to 370 pounds, which is, I don't know if you guys are not familiar with the weight in motorcycles, it's actually a very lightweight motorcycle. Oh, it has a fuel gauge. That's nice, huh? You don't get that on a lot of motorcycles. In fact, that's almost a deal breaker for me if a motorcycle only comes with like a just a fuel light. This one comes actually with a fuel gauge, so that's a plus. I'm not gonna take this bike, I'm not gonna take it to its limit because it's a brand new bike and I don't want to be unfair to the future owner of it by abusing the engine. while it's still brand new. So yeah, I expect me to kind of be very nimble on it, not super crazy. So it has fuel gauge, it has a mile per gallon estimate, that's kind of nice. It has a gear indicator. It is a very tiny but mighty screen, I gotta tell you that. The mirrors are not shaky at all. That's a big plus. I've seen much more expensive motorcycle with mirrors that shake so much you can't see anything outside them. You know, inner city riding, this is not lacking at all. I can definitely keep up with the speed of cars. Now, I'm not too sure about freeways. May or may not be too suitable for freeways, but street riding, this is heck of a bike. Let's test the brake here. Oh yeah, rear brake is much stronger than front brake. Front brake only has actually one disc. Hallmark of a low cc motorcycle is when the front wheel only has one disc, and this one does. It's only on this side, it's not on the other side. I don't know, overall this is probably the best beginner motorcycle you can find anywhere, and it's a Honda, so reliability wise you're not gonna beat this. No other brand is gonna beat this one. And now, onto the ME score for the 2023 Honda Rebel 300 ABS. In the commuter category, the Rebel comes with ABS, LED lighting promoting increased visibility, a street-friendly ergonomics, a cushiony seat, segmented fuel gauge for accurate reading, and a relatively large tank that holds 3 US gallons. With an MSRP of only $5,100 for the ABS model, access to the largest motorcycle dealership network in the US, and a brand recognized for its reliability, you have the perfect recipe for a daily commuter. The 2023 Honda Rebel 300 earns a 16 out of 20 in the commuter category. Now on to the performance/dope factor category. The Rebel 300 was not made with performance in mind. Quite the opposite, in fact. The only attributes to this bike that could remotely make it rideable on the track are that it has a slipper clutch, a wide rear tire for better handling, and a liquid-cooled engine able to more rapidly cool the bike down under high RPMs. With 22 horsepower to the wheel and a max of 18 foot-pounds of torque, this bike indeed is only suitable for inner city commuting and or training purposes. It won't have a problem on the freeway, but I would consider this bike not super safe, because if you have to get out of a murky situation on the freeway, you're gonna barely able to have the power to do so. However, a great redeeming factor is the extremely light weight of this bike. The Rebel 300 only weighs roughly 363 pounds wet, which is pretty outstanding. As for the design choices in marketplace, the Rebel 300 comes in 2 colors, Shadow Black and Candy Red for 2023 and Citric Orange for 2024, and 2 trims of ABS and non-ABS. The body style is conservative. I wouldn't call it attractive, but it definitely is going to age better over time. Fit and finish is flawless, which is expected of a Honda. As for brand opulence and model significance, the Rebel 300 is more of an economy-oriented model within Honda's lineup, which in and of itself is a budget-friendly brand. All said and done, the Rebel 300 earns an 11 out of 20 for the overall performance and dope factor category. And it sits here on the list of other cruisers I have reviewed. The Rebel 300 is a purpose-built bike. It is not made to race or impress. It is made to get a specific job done, and that job is to be the perfect daily commuter / the best first bike for a beginner motorcyclist. With a cheap MSRP and an unbelievable reliability, a non-offensive design, and a warranty like no other manufacturer, you won't be able to beat this deal with a stick.